Hi BookTube, it's Amy. Today after work I met one of my friends for a little bit of coconut milk gelato at our favorite bakery, and afterwards I wandered down, as I often do, to the book Bazaar, which is a great little used bookshop at 417 Bank Street here in Ottawa. So if you're ever in the area, I'd really recommend you check it out if you like the older books, if you're perhaps looking for titles you might not find anywhere else. So I wandered in there today and I came away with 5 books. 2 of them I was quite thrilled to come across. I found a couple of volumes by J.M. Barrie. Last month I read a novel by him called The Little Minister. And you probably know J.M. Barrie mainly for his most famous work, Peter Pan, but I've discovered that he wrote a number of novels geared towards adults, as well as what appears to be here, a collection of essays. So let me set down my tea and show you what I've got here. I found this volume here, which is part of a series, a set. The whole set, I'm not sure how many would have been in this complete set, is called The Novels, Tales, and Sketches of J.M. Barrie. This particular one is My Lady Nicotine, Margaret Ogilvy. And there wasn't, a cover page or a flap or anything to tell me what exactly this novel is about. So when I came home here, I Googled it. This particular edition is from 1922 and it appears to have been published by Scribner's in New York. So originally, I guess this work would have been published in 1896. And from what I found on Goodreads, it's a collection of essays. The synopsis for Goodreads says, focusing on his days as a smoker, J.M. Barrie takes us through his life as a smoker to his last pipe as he begins his non-smoking days. And they're described as humorous essays. So I'm not entirely sure what to expect here. I looked at a couple of reviews from people. Someone by the name of William said that although at times the work is uneven, it was nonetheless an enjoyable collection. Something interesting here from someone named Jason Carter. He says that it's a lesser known tome from the author of Peter Pan. It's an anecdotal remembrance of a society of pipeweed lovers who share a favorite tobacco. And someone else, Nina, described it as smooth and pleasing to read. So I think that's, a good enough recommendation for me to want to dive into this. And I will let you know, what I think after I've read it. So I found that one, but there was also a second volume on the shelf from the same edition here. And this is When a Man's Single. Now I Googled this as well, but unfortunately Goodreads didn't turn up anything for me. It was listed on Goodreads, but all I really got was a short couple of sentences about the author rather than about the work. And in further searching, outside of Goodreads, what I came across was either book listings from sellers wanting to sell it and they didn't tell me what the work was about, or I found, places where excerpts or the entire work had been posted, and of course I didn't want to dig too much into that. So unfortunately I really have no idea what When a Man's Single is about, but I'm going to, dive into it at some point in the next month or two, and we'll see what I think. Ever since I read The Little Minister last month, I'm quite interested to, discover if I like his other novels. There's a quote here there's an image here, and it says, "You are crying," he said. And that's interesting because the quote is actually on the thin tissue paper rather than on the image itself, which is not something I've ever actually seen. Normally that little piece of tissue paper to protect the images is left blank. This once again says 1896, so, you know, perhaps that's not the original publication date of the other work either, and it also says 1922, so I can confirm, I think, that these volumes here would have been printed in 1922, but at this point I'm not sure when either of these works would have been initially published. I do believe My Lady Nicotine predates Peter Pan, but I can't say for sure at this point. So I found those, and then I was browsing some more, and I always check the section on the shelf for Radcliffe Hall. There was quite a nice hardcover of The Well of Loneliness, but you know, it's difficult to justify picking up a hardcover of The Well of Loneliness when I've already got a perfectly decent paperback, and the hardcover itself is nothing spectacular. But for the first time I came across a copy of Adam's Breed, which is one of her other quite famous novels. Now, I do have to say I'm a little off-put by, you know, the image on here. I don't know if you can see, but there is something seriously wrong with the breasts on these women. They hang rather funny. It's almost as though there is, you know, a house-like shape between their breasts, which is certainly nothing I've ever seen in real life. So it isn't on image, but I do like these Virago modern classics. I have The Unlit Lamp, which is another novel by Radcliffe Hall in this edition. And you know, if I had wanted to, I could have also gotten The Well of Loneliness in this Virago modern classics edition, but as I said, can't really justify buying another copy when I have a perfectly good edition of The Well of Loneliness. So I looked this one up on Goodreads as well, and there's really, you know, a very short synopsis about it up on there, and it says it's a novel about a waiter that becomes disgusted with his job and goes to live in the forest as a hermit, which makes it sound like a rather bizarre novel, and I think that's where Goodreads definitely has a downfall, because when I read the back of this book, it sounds nothing like that at all, really. So the back says, illegitimate and orphaned, Gianluca is brought up by his Italian grandparents in their prosperous Salumera, that's a word I don't know, in Old Compton Street, Soho. Here, surrounded by plenty, by bottles of Chianti in straw petticoats, by pasta and garlic, strings of sausage and jars of dark olives, he lacks that more important sustenance of the soul. A stranger in the land of his birth, denied religious identity and human love, Gianluca grows to maturity, seeking to resolve a terrible conflict between the needs of his spirit and the demands of the material world. First published in 1926, Adam's Breed won the Prix Femina, not familiar with that prize, and the James Tate Black Prize. A psychological novel in the tradition of Mary Sinclair and Dorothy Richardson. It is one of Radcliffe Hall's most interesting works of fiction. So that synopsis sounds infinitely more interesting than the one provided on Goodreads, so I'm glad I did get, you know, an edition with this, this back available to me. Now, I picked up one more book here. I think I might have said 5 at the beginning of this this video, but it's definitely only 4. I picked up 4 books, and the final one is Troubled Sleep by Jean-Paul Sartre, and I picked this up not because I haven't read it, but because I was surprised to find it under this title. It's more usually published under the title Iron and the Soul, and it is the 3rd volume in his The Road to Freedom trilogy, which I've read all of, and I have them in paperback behind me here. I don't think you can see them because I've got my Shakespeare's in front, but that's a series I quite enjoy, and so it was just interesting for me to come across this hardcover here, translated by Gerard Hopkins and published in 1950. And it's a, you know, it's a solid book, good paper here. But yeah, this is the first time I've ever come across it published under the title Troubled Sleep as opposed to Iron in the Soul. And to me, that was, just something very interesting to pick up. I have an Alberto Moravia novel that is published under the title Two. And, when I've seen it elsewhere, it's not published under that title. I can't remember what it's more commonly published under. But for me, it's just interesting to find early translations into English of certain works that, are published under a title that it's not commonly known under now. And so that was my interest in picking up that particular novel. So as I said, the Book Bazaar is, a favorite spot of mine here in Ottawa. And if you're ever finding yourself up here in Canada, here in Ottawa, you might want to check it out. It's at 417 Bank Street.